It's not about them. It's about this policy that puts trained peace officers in opposition to trained veterans and other trained police officers, or even just a trained citizen in their home. So you got two trained people who both know how to fight, who neither one of them is just going to curl up in a ball and just go fetal when someone comes through the door. They're going to react. They're going to react to defend their family. They're going to react like warriors, and trained warriors. And so you shouldn't put the two of them together. This is good guys shooting bad guys, unnecessarily. And it's going to get worse because you got all these guys training from Iraq and Afghanistan. They know how to fight. And they're not going to just, even a flashbang is not going to make them go fetal. They're going to respond. And you can't do that. You got to give them time. You got to let them know it's the police. That's what's reasonable. The Fourth Amendment protects us against unreasonable searches. There's no more unreasonable search than one that winds up in your death for a simple search warrant. And putting them in that kind of posture together like that, under that time frame, snap-second decisions of who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, is unreasonable.
And the other side would strongly disagree, saying that they had plenty of intel that this was going to be a violent or possibly violent search warrant. That's why the SWAT team is there.
I have bacon.
Because why? Because one of the factors they consider is whether they have firearms, and about 80 million to 100 million Americans, at least half the country has firearms. That can't be used as a criteria. This is what's unfortunately happening, is they're equating gun ownership as being equal to a violent criminal history. This guy had a clean record, but because he was a gun owner and might have a gun in his house, they consider that to be equivalent as far as the danger to a police officer. This is a recipe for disaster. What this is saying is that anytime a gun owner becomes the subject of an investigation and there's a search warrant, just a mere search warrant to gather evidence to see whether they'll be charged. Long before charges, they're saying they're going to treat them as though they have a long history of violent crime. If you're concerned about officer safety, the way to handle it is to pull him over on the way home from the mine. They can figure out very easily what time he gets off work, pull him over en route. Now you're outside his house. Now he knows it's the police. Now he's not inside of his house. If you're so worried about a dangerous suspect who may shoot you as you come in, why would you want to go from a bright exterior outside into a dark house through what they call a fatal funnel of a doorway and a hallway into a house? If he's really that dangerous, wouldn't you rather talk to him and stop him outside the house? That makes tactical sense. So I don't buy that argument.
Yeah, beyond the guns, they said that they believe that he was involved in a drug organization and that he was also involved in multiple home invasions. What's that?
So that's their allegations. That's what a search warrant is for. You go gather evidence. If you think you have enough evidence to charge, you charge, and then you have a trial. I've had some people balk at being here because they said, we want to know whether or not he's involved in criminal activity. I said, well, guess what? You're never going to know because he's never going to get a trial. There's never going to be an adjudication of his guilt or innocence in crimes. All there's going to be is allegations and innuendo. There's never going to be a final result. Here in America, you are innocent until proven guilty under our system of laws. And until that is done, then the rest of it's irrelevant. Now, and here the bigger picture is even if he was involved in something like that, he has a right to a trial. You don't just come through his door, put a gun in his face, and then wind up in a shootout with him on the other side with the safety still on. Why was the safety still on? I think it's because, as a trained Marine, he was still trying to assess the threat. That's far more likely than he somehow forgot, as a two-tour combat veteran, somehow forgot to take his safety off when he intended to kill cops. I don't think so. Any one of us would have been the same exact way. But we're trying to assess the threat and decide whether it's good guy with gun or bad guy with gun. The SWAT team's coming in. They're going to shoot you on sight because you're armed. That's the problem.
What does him being a Marine in the past have anything to do with what happened?
Because he's trained. As I said, the more well-trained you are, it's a perverse situation where the better trained you are, the more likely you are to be shot by SWAT, because a trained man is not going to go fetal and just collapse and just, during the headlights when a SWAT team comes to the door. A trained man is going to kick in his training and react just like this Marine did. I'd be the same way. My retired police officer from Dave Freeman, who's a retired Las Vegas Metro cop, my Western Coast vice president, said he'd react the exact same way, and so would Sheriff Mack. Police, military, trained civilians will all react the exact same way. They're going to react by moving towards the threat, and they're going to try to identify the threat, which is a responsible thing to do. But like I said, while they're trying to identify the threat, the SWAT team's coming through the door, they see men with a gun, they shoot. You're going to wind up with more dead veterans, you're going to wind up with dead cops too. We don't want to see that. We have cops and a military organization. We don't want to see them unnecessarily being thrown together and causing firefights.
How are the deputies supposed to react whenever he picked up a gun and said, I've got something?
If he said that, that's the allegation. Okay, so hey, like I said, he might be reacting to what he sees as a home invasion. So they shouldn't be there in the first place, is my point. Knock on the door, give the person time to look outside and see that it's the police. They rang that siren. That siren sounded like a car alarm. And they're also 2 blocks away from a fire department. And so the only way you really know, if you're the homeowner, for sure that this is about you, is when the knock comes on the door. I watched that video, the knock came, and 4 seconds later, the door was down. That's not enough time for a civilized human being in a civilized society to look out the window and see it's the police. Give them time to see it's the police. 9 times out of 10, your veteran is going to put down his weapon, relax, and go, oh, okay, it's the cops. Open the door, come on in. Go ahead and do the search. And like I said, if you're really concerned, this particular veteran could be a threat to law enforcement, stop him on the way home. Why go into a fatal funnel of a doorway into a darkened home from the bright exterior when your eyes are not adjusted to the dark, and then go shooting in there like that, you know, all high-speed, low drag, toothpaste tube style into this house, into a dark house? That doesn't make tactical sense. If he's really a dangerous guy, I want to stop him on the street on the way home. And this was the consensus of all our police officers also. That makes tactical sense. So they're doing things that don't make tactical sense, but trying to excuse them by saying this is the only way to do it, tactically. And it's just nonsense.
What do you hope to come out today?
What we hope is to start a reversal of the militarization of our police and a reversal of the policy of using SWAT teams to serve search warrants like this. For barricaded suspects, for hostage situations, for true terrorism like Mumbai-style terrorism, you know, active shooters, that's what a SWAT team is for, and God bless them, that's what they're good for. When you know it's a bad guy and he's killing people, that's what it's for. Not when you have a homeowner who's only been, merely suspected of a crime, and you throw him into a situation where you're treating him as though he's a barricaded suspect or a hostage taker. It makes no sense. And you're putting guns in this situation here, 71 rounds went through this clapboard house, could easily have killed Vanessa Guerena or her 4-year-old son. And this is the problem. And went through other houses. Luckily, no one else was hurt. But it could have been that way. You could have killed a kid down the street. Is that worth it? To simply serve a search warrant, or is there a better way? Stop them on the way home. That's the better way.
Is there anything else?
We're going to tomorrow deliver a petition to the governor, the legislature of Arizona, and also to the Attorney General of Arizona, calling for the correction of this policy and some serious oversight by the state. This is about the Second Amendment and the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. We're using our First Amendment rights to make sure that the right to bear arms, and also, more importantly than ever, the security of the people in their homes against unreasonable searches is protected. And state officers are all oath sworn like we are. They have an obligation and duty to make sure that's done.
And that would be statewide, not just
statewide. And we're going to call for the same thing to be done across the country. We want people across the country to go petition their sheriff, say, Sheriff, we want from you a written guarantee that you will not do this to us. If I become the subject of a search warrant, I don't want this done. I got 5 kids. I got a 14-year-old son that's 6 feet tall. If he comes stumbling out of the bathroom in the middle of the night, there's a SWAT guy standing there, he makes one wrong move, what's going to happen to him? He's going to get shot. That shouldn't be happening. I don't want that in my house. I don't want that in your house. I don't want that in anybody's house. It shouldn't be like that in a free country.